So recently I've been a bit up and down. As you might have noticed in my videos, one moment I'm kind of really good. The next moment I'm kind of like, woof, something hits me and I'm pretty down. And I just, I've been thinking about this a lot in the last couple of months because I've noticed that I'm actually really, really sensitive to varying different things in my life. And I always have been, really. It's not hard for me to go from one state, like a really happy state, to a really miserable state in like sometimes a matter of minutes or a matter of seconds, regarding to the stimulus that I might have viewed, so to speak. Do you know what I mean? And I'm sort of aware of this and aware that this happens. It sounds kind of, it almost sounds like I've got some kind of spectrum disorder. Almost, I don't know if you could call it psychotic or whatever, but it's not it's not psychotic, but at the same time it's just like really weird mood disorder or something like that. But in actual fact, I don't think that it's that weird, because in my everyday life, and you could say that this is because of what I'm attracting and stuff, but in my everyday life I see a lot of people go through these kind of mood cycles where they're in one state of mind one minute, and the next minute somebody else comes along and they do something that really irritates them, and then they're in this other kind of frame of mind, this kind of I'm really natty and peed off, and and it's all down to expectation and everything else. But it's really kind of, it's almost like kind of made me think actually that I'm not alone in this. It's not actually the cycle of these kind of things, these emotions and these feelings that we have is not actually that abnormal, but we only notice these things when we see it in an extreme, such as somebody who kind of maybe loses their temper. It would seem like at the spur of the moment, without any kind of stimulus at all. It's only then that we tend to notice these kind of moods. But when it's more, when it's like a more mild kind of situation, like say for internally inside yourself, where you kind of have a mood change or whatever, that you don't really kind of notice that in a sense, or it's not noticeable enough for us most of the time to do anything about it. And this really, in a sense, is precisely where we need to do the work, and where we need to kind of, I wouldn't say monitor our thoughts, but kind of keep a general eye on how you're feeling, and just notice those things that come up, and say, well, actually, as a matter of fact, yeah, I've been having this kind of these kind of moods for a little while. Now I know that they're there, I can start to do something about them. So the other issue, the issue that I was trying to get at today for me is that why do we continue to go over the same thing over and over again, even though we know what's causing it? And I would guess really I can apply that to myself really only if I'm honest. I'm not really applying it to anybody else, because I kind of see myself as a little bit kind of a bit of an oddity in a sense with regard to that, because I don't know, but I guess I could apply it to others as well, but not in quite the same way. But my general moods, if I were to describe myself, I'm a very highly strung person. It doesn't take a lot for me to be swung off balance, and often the consequences for me are quite dramatic. So something could trigger me, and it might send me into a spiraling sort of state where I'm all of a sudden in a really very low state. Maybe it might spark off a depression. It's always a gradual thing that you head towards in a sense, but it only takes it's just kind of contradicting myself there, but it's kind of, it takes, there's a very kind of, that state that I go into is kind of it's very dramatic, is what I would call it. Very dramatic. So, the bit that bothers me most about it is I mean, it can get quite complicated, and it doesn't need to be complicated, but usually I'll go into a state where I know what's going on, and I know exactly how to fix it in a sense, but because that pattern is so strong, I tend to stay lodged in the pattern, and because I want to sort it out, I then end up getting further lodged into the pattern because I'm thinking about it. How can I do this? How can I get? And what I need to do is diversify my attention to something else, or a different aspect of that subject. Or if it's a too strong a subject, then I need to diverse myself away from it completely. So so why do we do something, and then why do we do something when we know that we shouldn't, or that we not that we shouldn't, when we know that we need to know, we know that we can resolve it in some way by not thinking about it. And in a sense, the answer is because it's like an addiction. We're addicted to that thought, we're addicted to that emotion, we're addicted to being that way. And I've been reading the Joe Dispenza book recently. I've actually finished reading it just recently. I've started to read it again. Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself. And it's crazy. It's like those habits, those impulses, they kind of, in a sense, they kind of become who you are. You start to define yourself by these, and who they kind of, in a sense, it's almost like you feel like they're a part of. Sorry, a message just came through and it's kind of thrown me off. I thought I forgot to switch my phone into airplane mode, so that's a bit of a nuisance. It's almost like they become part of who you are, and they are who you are, and you become afraid to let go of them because of your ego state. And your ego state is kind of insistent on clinging onto these patterns because that's all it knows. And without these patterns, the ego is in fear of its existence. Its very existence, because it exists on those patterns. It's kind of strange, and you're not linked into who you are. It's all to do. It's a lot of it's down to security and being a particular person in the world. Those attachments. It's something that at the moment there's like a bit of a divide for me with it. In a sense, there's no divide, but in a sense there is a divide, and I think that divide is with regard to fear. And of course, as if you've read Joe Dispenza's book, that is really just the ego trying to hold on to what it knows, in a sense, and fearing. It's almost like the death of itself. As a result of you practicing new things, doing new things. And there's another way to look at this as well, because in my conversations with Frank, he kind of outlined, and it's all this stuff coming together about the inner child, the inner part of yourself that's afraid, and we went through this process, and Frank said, look, it's a different way of doing it. We're going to make a success team up with all of, it's kind of like those partners in that team. Maybe, for example, might be unconditional love, freedom. They could be integrity and all that sort of stuff. And you're going to call on those people, and Barry's going to be a part of that team. You're going to integrate him. So Barry was was that part of myself that was afraid. So you could call that the ego state. I've kind of linked that into that part of myself being the inner child, the kind of ego, in a sense. It's kind of, in a way, it's kind of a similar sort of thing, because there's it's kind of a similar thing. And so that's what I kind of linked it into, and I'm trying to link all this stuff together, because what I quite often find is that if there's too many components going on, it tends to get confusing. So you need to kind of root it down in some form of structure, so that you know where you stand with it. Otherwise, you're just firing off in multiple directions, and not being able to figure out anything again, because thinking, well, which do I do? What do I do? I've got all these systems. I mean, in theory, you just lock down to a system and stick with it. But we're always learning different things and adding different things to that. And so I think you always need a base for that particular those things to go with, and a system. And obviously we're not linked to a system. We can't sort anything out, so to speak. So yeah, I mean, this conversation's kind of gone off a bit off track, really, but yeah, I guess that's today's video, guys. I'm sorry it's not been very. It's been a marathon video, and I've kind of stayed on the same subject. But I mean, I guess it just goes into really the complications for me personally that I'm having, which could easily be resolved. But as is of usual, those patterns that we have, they're very strong patterns. They're very well established, and they need, it's not gonna be a case of you just do something and then it resolves it, because it never is. What happens is you work up to those resolutions, those particular things. You have to kind of put the work in each day, and I think that's been one of the things that I've kind of been trying to avoid, because these issues and these things are so painful to me. So love your opinions on this, guys. I would love to have your points of view, and would love to see what you think. I would love to see if any of you have got to the end of this video, because it is a particularly long video, and I do apologise for that, but I just had to kind of get this out of my mind and onto video. So yeah, have a good day, guys, and happy New Year. If I don't see, well, I won't see you before, so happy New Year, and enjoy. Don't get too drunk, and enjoy your time. Happy New Year. Your happy New Year. So yeah, take it easy, guys. I'll speak to you very soon.